Looking back on my work, I feel that I was doing nothing more than mistakes, blunders, and serious omissions. Although I made one mistake after another, my mistakes and failures never occurred for the same reasons. These were the powerful words of SOICHIRO Honda, a visionary who lived for and fulfilled his dreams. What was that dream, and how did he achieve it?
Well, let's find out.
Tenryu Shizuoka was a small rural settlement in Japan that nestled just beneath Mount Fuji. It was known for its poor development, economic instability, and abject poverty. In 1906, Gihei and Mika Honda had their first son, Soichiro Honda, in this village. Gihei was a local blacksmith, and Mika excelled in fabric craftsmanship. It was barely enough to get by. Needless to say, Soichiro was born into poverty. Hardship was all he knew and learned to embrace as he grew older. His parents didn't have it easy either. They lost 5 of their other children to medical challenges due to their difficulties. That Soichiro survived was a miracle, but little did they know that he was a child with a very bright future. One day, little Soichiro was playing around like every other normal child in the neighborhood when he heard strange sounds in the distance. So he followed after the sound and was shocked to find a cart on 4 wheels moving along on its own. He described this experience as a thrill, seeing a car for the very first time, without even thinking why, he said. I found myself chasing it down the road as fast as I could run. Following this, Soichiro would never remain the same. Instead, he became attracted to engines and their mechanics. He invested a lot of time learning to sharpen tools and fix bicycles. This didn't go without a price, as Soichiro's performance in school dropped drastically. He clearly didn't find as much motivation to go to school as he did helping his father at the workshop. One would imagine that Gihei Honda was proud of his readily inclusive son. However, the reverse was the case. Gihei wanted his child to obtain a proper education. On one such occasion, Soichiro received his grade report, and his scores were way below average. But of course, he wasn't going to show this to his father, so he devised a way to get out of the situation. Soichiro cunningly forged the family stamp onto a piece of rubber and used it on his result paper. That way he wouldn't need to show his father his grades. Unfortunately, his little plan went south. His father found out and punished him by making him kneel on bare floors for a whole day. Years passed and Soichiro was soon 15 years old. This year, he found an advertisement in a magazine announcing a vacancy at an automobile company called Art Shokai. It was a booming motor service company in Tokyo, Japan. Soichiro decided he was going to join the train. Soichiro was a little tired of the life he was living. He wanted to go out and see the world for himself. But the small village was too little to contain his huge dreams, even though they weren't so clear to him just yet. He realized that sitting and thinking would be of no help, so
take that leap of faith.
He decided to tender an application to Art Shokai. Fortunately, he received a positive response and was called for a job. The excitement was massive. He was going to Tokyo. Armed with a new sense of direction and optimism, Soichiro left home in 1922. Maybe he should have
given the matter some more thought.
On arriving at Art Shokai, his master, Mr. Yuzo Sakakibara, had a job set out for Soichiro, but it wasn't testing the motor engines or checking the fuel gauge as he'd hoped. Instead, he was to babysit Mr. Sakakibara's child. Soichiro was disappointed. This wasn't what he left home for. He wanted to return, but the fear of being called a failure stopped him. So instead, he decided to look on the bright side and see his newfound position as a learning opportunity. Little by little, Soichiro gathered knowledge and information about how things worked at Art Shokai. Also, given his babysitting duties, he developed a good relationship with the Sakakibara family. However, this wasn't what he wanted for himself. He silently wished that one day he would be allowed to serve in the workshop.
That day is finally here.
The workload at Art Shokai was becoming too much to handle, and for that reason, Soichiro was asked to join the workforce and help lessen the tension. Though he initially started out doing small tasks, it was soon evident that he was a skilled repairman. Mr. Sakakibara was impressed. He saw that Soichiro had potential and took it upon himself to teach the boy the practicals of the automobile industry. In 1923, Soichiro was opened up to the fascinating world of motorsports, as Sakakibara began building some racing cars of his own. They basically crafted exquisite car frames fitted with second-hand engines from foreign-made vehicles. As a result, they made racing cars like the Art Daimler and the Curtiss. The Curtiss was a combination of the engine from an American Curtiss biplane and the frame of another vehicle called the Mitchell. This car would take part in the 1924 Japanese Motor Car Championship. Sakakibara's brother drove the car while Soichiro tagged along as a supporting engineer. They came out in first place, and this was an event that would chart the rest of Soichiro's course forever. It turns out Soichiro wasn't exempted from health challenges as we believed. He just didn't know it yet, and it wouldn't be as serious as his siblings. As a matter of fact,
It would be a blessing.
in 1926, 19-year-old Soichiro was recruited for service in the military. He was laid off after all when it was discovered that he was colorblind and not fit for the job. What would have been a disappointment for most young men was an advantage for Soichiro. He could return to work and continue doing what he loved.
And not long after that,
Sakakibara opened a branch of Art Shokai in a town called Hamamatsu. He believed that Soichiro was competent enough to manage the place, so he handed it over to him. This was way too early, and a new overwhelming challenge for the 21-year-old Soichiro. The first year went by with much struggle, owing to the fact that people perceived him to be young, inexperienced, and incapable of handling their repairs. Soichiro decided to win the people over by performing excellently with what little he was dealt. Soon enough, his brilliant craftsmanship was known across the town. His shop also grew at an incredible pace. It was in this shop that Soichiro built the Hamamatsu, a racing car that he would drive himself in a competition. With this car, he broke the speed record by driving up to 120 kilometers per hour. This record stayed unopposed for 20 years in Japan, so now Soichiro wasn't just known for his automobile repairs, but his daring race driving skills. This newfound flair wouldn't last too long though. In 1936, Soichiro suffered a crash while racing the Hamamatsu, and he almost died. Several bones in his body were fractured, and his face was severely damaged. What he did next would cause a big rift in his family. Only 4 months after nursing back to health, Soichiro returned to the racetracks. His wife and father were having none of it, and after many heated confrontations, Soichiro never retook the wheel. Soichiro decided he was done with just auto repairs. It was time to move on to more incredible things and take one more step toward achieving his goals. He wanted to start manufacturing car parts in his branch of the Art Shokai. However, the stakeholders and investors didn't share this sentiment. They tried to dissuade him from making this decision. Determined to move on, Soichiro established the Tekai Seiki Heavy Industry in 1936. It was a company that would manufacture piston rings. This isn't to say he gave up working at Art Shokai. He would spend his days managing the branch and his nights making piston rings. The mental and physical stress caused by this shuffle made him look sickly and deformed. Coupled with this, he spent the next few years a total failure at creating piston rings. For this reason, he decided to start a part-time course at the Hamamatsu Industrial Institute. One day, the Toyota company contracted Soichiro to produce piston rings for them. He delivered 50 piston rings, out of which only 3 were up to standards.
This was a severe setback.
But he hadn't come this far to quit now. He began touring factories and schools, anywhere he could get helpful information at all. It was after this that Soichiro was able to create piston rings that worked and could match all set standards. This is when the company blew up. He later employed well over 2,000 workers to help him keep up with the growth. Things were really beginning to look great for Soichiro. In 1941, Japan started the Pacific War, which affected every individual and business owner in the country, but Soichiro seemed to have had the worst hit. First, his company was placed under the control of the Japanese Ministry of Munitions. Next, the Toyota company claimed 45% of Soichiro's company shares. Then, he was demoted from the position of president to senior managing director of his own company. Afterwards, many of his male employees had to quit their jobs because they were recruited for the military. Soichiro began to really struggle as he was gradually losing grip of himself. However, the worst was yet to come. In 1944, the war became more intense. There were shootings and mass killings everywhere. Hamamatsu was at the heart of it, and Tekai Seiki was in the heart of Hamamatsu. One day, Soichiro's company was hit by a direct bomb blast that brought everything down to an incorrigible pile of rubble and spandex. As if that wasn't enough, in January 1945, the Nankai earthquake struck, taking down one of Soichiro's plants with it. By the time the war ceased in August 1945, Soichiro was back at ground zero. Frustrated, he decided to sell what remained to Toyota and retreat from the business world for a while. Still, he hadn't given up on his principles.
He hadn't. Of course he hadn't.
He knew that a product would sell should he be backed with an idea aimed at solving the problems of the masses. So he set out to do just that, develop a solution to the need for cheap transportation in Japan. He found a generator engine that belonged to the Japanese Imperial Army. It was used during the war to supply electricity to a cordless radio. While studying its mechanisms, an idea came to him. What if he attached the engine to a bicycle? In 1946, Soichiro founded the Honda Technical Research Institute, where he and his team of 12 men sought to devise an efficient means of attaching motorcycles to bicycles. Using some secondhand engines and bicycle spare parts, they were able to create the first motor-powered bicycle in Japan. This idea sold off quickly, and soon, Soichiro ran short of his used engines. So, he decided to make some of his own. In 1947, he was able to develop the Type A engine, which was used in producing Honda motorbikes from then on. In 1948, Soichiro Honda founded the Honda Motor Company. His dream was to set Japan in motion again.
Literally.
He got a couple of companies to invest in his ideas, and by 1949, the company launched its first motorbike called the Honda Model D. Its sales were slow, however, as the machine was heavy and people needed a portable, manageable means of transportation. In 3 years, Soichiro was able to condense his initial idea into a lightweight motorbike, which he called the Super Cub thanks to its design. This model quickly amassed popularity and even won the Emperor's Prize the following year. In 1958, the Super Cub got to the United States. It was sold at $295, which is 1/4 the cost of most other popular motorbike brands like Harley-Davidson. This marketing strategy made the Honda name more famous and outsold other companies.
But old habits die hard, I guess.
Soon, Soichiro moved his motorbikes to the racetracks again and took advantage of several platforms to showcase his creations. Its first initial race in 1954 set off to a sour finish. However, after months of readjustment and re-strategizing, Honda motorbikes won Manufacturer's Team Prize at the Isle of Man TT in 1959 and again in 1961. Ultimately, this racing habit of Soichiro's became the greatest marketing strategy of all, which sold Honda to the world. The company became the most recognized motorcycle manufacturer around the globe.
But it wasn't enough.
That image of the car he saw when he was 8 years old was still emblazoned on his mind. He wanted to start manufacturing automobiles. Unlike his motorbike idea, Soichiro's automobile plan wasn't really set to solve a problem. He just wanted to fulfill his dreams. Besides, Japan wasn't short of automobile companies. They had Toyota, Nissan, and others. So Soichiro's idea seemed crazy. He was advised to stay content with his success in the motorcycle industry, but Soichiro wouldn't listen. In 1963, Honda put out the T360 mini truck, the company's first branded car. It was quickly followed by the S500, a race car capable of reaching 80 kilometers per hour. Unfortunately, only about 1,300 units of this model were built, as it didn't gain much traction. Again, Honda created the Honda R8 271 and the 272 with the sole purpose of marketing his brand through the ever-reliable racetrack. It wasn't long before the latter won first place in the 1965 Mexican Grand Prix. Still, Soichiro wasn't reaching as far as he had hoped in The Coward Beyond the Tracks. Soichiro realized he wasn't doing something right. His cars needed defeat to attain, a problem to solve that would distinguish them from the rest. So in 1972, Honda Motor Company launched its new model, the Honda Civic. At this time, there was an oil crisis in Europe and America. As a result, prices of car fuels had risen so high due to its shortage, which led to an economic crisis. Honda Civic set out to combat that challenge through the use of compound vortex-controlled combustion, or CVCC mechanism. This was a method devised by Soichiro for fuel management. It allowed the Honda Civic to run for longer distances on significantly less amounts of fuel. Also, Soichiro added a catalytic converter to his cars to stop them from polluting the air with waste smoke.
And just like that,
Honda became an automobile industry giant, but he didn't stop there. As the years passed, Honda expanded its model range, essentially adding distinct upgrades and improvements to each one as he went. With this, Honda Motor Company became the third largest car production company in Japan and the third largest in the world by the 1900s. Today, Honda is valued at $43 billion and manufactures more than just motorcycles and automobiles. They ventured into other things like boat engines, jets, home appliances, robots, and power tools, amongst others. Soichiro Honda retired in 1973, and when he died in 1991, he died a man who fulfilled all his dreams. If you're enjoying this video and want to see more like this, don't forget to watch this exciting video we made about Joule.